Janet was reading the gospel, I turned to Darrell and said, "Does the rector usually preach from the pulpit?" And he said, "Yes." The minute he said that, this gentleman came here and put a camera on me, so I don't know about it. Told somebody I was in the witness protection program.
Not anymore.
I'd like to speak with you for a few moments this morning about the second reading from St. Paul to the Romans, where at the end of that reading, he talks about God's unconditional love for us. On Father's Day, I usually think of two people. I think of my own father, who passed away in the year 2000. He was a Montclair policeman for 40 years. Montclair is a suburb of Newark, New Jersey, in North Jersey. And I was the oldest of 5 children. The 7 of us lived in the 3-room apartment. My father was a policeman in the day when policemen weren't paid very much money, so we had 2 jobs. He worked hard to support his family. My father was a good man. He loved us. He was a very big man, but his bark was always louder than his bite. It was my mother we had to watch out for. My father worked hard his whole life. At the age of 65, he retired. A year after he retired, he had a severe stroke, and he spent the next 8 years in the Paramus Veterans Home, also in North Jersey, in Bergen County. So I think of my father on Father's Day with great affection. The second man I think of is a man named John. And John I met, my first 25 years in the priesthood I spent as a Catholic priest. Then I got married. My wife's not here today, she's in Philadelphia. And I spent the next 20 years as an Episcopal priest. In the first parish I was in as a priest was a big, busy Catholic parish in North Jersey, right by Giants Stadium. And I had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of duties. One of them was I taught religion in the school, but I also taught gym, and I got to know a lot of kids through teaching them gym. And there was a man named John who had 3 children that were in the grammar school when I was there. He had a daughter and 2 sons. One of his sons always seemed to struggle during his years in school. He was bullied by other kids. He had a tough time academically. And he got into drugs when he was starting high school. His father not only spent a lot of money to try to help him heal and grow, but gave him great love and great affection and great support. When this man, John's son, was a senior in high school, one day he disappeared. Totally disappeared. Police looked for him. The family looked for him. No one could find him. They didn't know if he died, if he committed suicide, if he was in the marshes by Giant Stadium, if he ran away. No one knew where he was. And this man for years lived with a hole in his heart. Over the years, after I left that church, I lost contact with him. But ironically enough, about 8 years ago, I saw him in a restaurant down the shore here. And I saw him across the room. And immediately our eyes met. He knew me and I knew him. And you could see the tears in his eyes, that he was still suffering, what that contact evoked in him. And I went over to speak with him, and he said to me, a lot had developed over the last 20 years. He said that he didn't know where his son was for years, But in the age of the computer, in the age of Google, he found out that his son was still alive and was living in the state of Washington on the West Coast with a wife and children. He went out to see his son, and his son totally disowned him. That's why he left in high school, for reasons still unbeknownst to him. On Father's Day, I think of him because he said to me that night, he said, no matter what, I still love my son. And I think of him, and I think of that reading from St. Paul this morning about God's unconditional love. We're all called to mirror that unconditional love as best we can, despite our faults and failings in our life. We certainly fall far short of that, but we're called to that. So on this Father's Day, we're reminded by Paul about the infinite, unconditional love that the Father has for us by the power of the Spirit through Jesus. We think of that, and we think of fathers.